Hello everyone and welcome to another real estate video. This is Javy, the real estate YouTube guy in Phoenix, Arizona, helping you accomplish your home goals. So right now it's November in Phoenix, and because we're so used to the heat, my body is just breaking down because of the cold. So I am wearing a jacket, so I apologize for the informality of it, but I think you guys know, whoever watches the channel know that we like to keep things casual but professional here. But anyways, I like to introduce a new series to the channel. I'm gonna call this series the Negotiation Series, where I'm gonna talk about how to get what you want and win out of key parts of the real estate transaction, not transaction. I've realized that there's basically three main parts of the transaction where you as the buyer have leverage to actually negotiate things in your favor if there is an opportunity. The first one is going to be when you actually make the offer or getting the offer accepted. The second one is when you're negotiating repairs during the inspection period. And the third one is if the appraisal does happen to come in low. So I'm going to talk about each one of these factors in three separate videos. And in today's video, I'm going to introduce it formally with probably the toughest one, because you can't even do the other two if you don't even get the first part done, which is getting your offer accepted. So if you guys have any questions or anything regarding the other future installments, please wait for the future videos. But for now, if you have any questions about this one, please leave your comments below. And what I love about this series, guys, is I'm going to give you guys real life scenarios and situations that my clients and I encountered that actually shows the proof of the pudding, or pudding of the proof, or how the heck does that saying go? I'm bad with sayings. Winning the offer negotiation, or in other words, getting your offer accepted, that negotiation part of it, I want you guys to think of it as, it's not black or white. It's like Ditto. You remember Ditto from Pokemon? The guy that changes to different Pokemon, adjusts and molds, like a pink blob thing. That's how I want you to think about basically each time you encounter a house that you like. Every house is not going to be the same. It's not just black or white. And more importantly, every buyer is not the same. The first thing you have to do is realize what kind of buyer you are before we even talk about anything else. The first category is the most common one. This is the buyer who has their down payment or is using down payment assistance and does not want to pay their closing costs. So we're going to request the seller to pay for those. Now this could be because you might have the money for the closing costs, but you just don't want to be left with $0 after closing, or maybe you have barely enough for the down payment, so there's literally no way you can buy at closing costs. Well, if you're in this situation, then a win is going to be getting your offer accepted with the seller paying your closing costs. It's that simple. Now, other factors are definitely essential, but that's the main component here, because if I were to get you a beautiful house and the closing costs aren't being paid for the seller, then it's just like, no, it's not going to work, Javier. We can't buy this. Like, we need the closing costs to get paid for, right? So if you're in this category of the situation, most of the time your win is going to be getting the offer accepted, the house you like, of course, and getting your closing costs paid. The second category I see that's not too frequent, but is starting to get more popular right now, is you're a type of buyer who is paying your own down payment, or maybe is using some kind of program, but is also paying their own closing costs. You are basically the seller's dream here. They fantasize about you, they dream about you, they just love you. When a seller lists their property for sale, they have fantasies about a buyer who comes in and can pay their own closing costs. What's unfortunate about paying your own closing costs is, if you put another $8,000 towards your loan, then overall over the life of the loan, that's going to actually benefit you, right? You're paying your own closing costs. You are paying your own fees that technically are being incurred by you, but that money is just kind of going to get paid, and you're not going to ever see a return on it ever, right? The down payment, you always get it back when you sell it. Closing costs, it just kind of goes away to pay your costs. So you want to make sure to get as much value from having to do that, and you can do this by either getting an offer accepted with below list price. That could be a scenario. So the win for you in this situation is just getting the most value, the most bang for your buck, if you will, from the fact that you're paying your own closing costs. Got it? Good. Get it? Perfect. All right. Now, before we get into specific stories of what's helped my clients in each one of these scenarios, I want to just make sure to give you some general advice that helps you regardless of what situation you're in. My number one tip for the general advice is making a prompt offer. The seller is aware when you make your offer, when you go look at the house and how quickly you make the offer. If you go look at the house one day and then it takes you 3 or 4 days to make the offer, the seller's gonna think, what's going on? Like, do they not like my house? It's all about winning little psychological victories with the seller or the listing agent. And one little one that sets up a very good, who the heck is daring to mess up my video with this sign right now? I've just learned that it's a little psychological win when my client loves a house and then literally a few hours later the offer is being made to the seller or the listing agent. You can clearly show that this buyer is very serious and doesn't want to waste time. Number two, and it's not something necessarily you can look, but you can kind of see what your agent's doing, is being professional. Like the offer that make sure the offer is being typed, make sure that's being very clear, make sure there's no check boxes being missed and no forms or areas being blank. I've had several situations where this has literally won me the offer. At the end of the day, the listing agent wants to make sure they work with someone that they're gonna like and they're gonna trust, and if that person is clear and professional with their contract, they probably will be the other hand. And I've also been on the other side with the listing agent where the seller they see the offers like handwritten, it's really like not professional, and it just says a lot, and they'd rather go with someone that knows what they're doing rather than someone that seems like they're not really, being professional. Number three is make sure you know what's going on with the house before you make the offer. You want to, just like ditto, adjust yourself to the right situation. If the offer, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but I want to make sure I just put it here. Make sure that you're not making blind offers. Find out, or have your agent find out what's going on, what's the scenario before making anything happen. Now, if the agent's not responding and they're not, picking up their phone, then you have to make a blind offer. It is what it is, but just try your best to get a hold of the seller agent. And the last one is probably the most important one. That if you're going to take one thing from this video, is doing this. Writing a nice letter to the seller when making your offer is a really crucial thing. Now, let's be like ditto and let's mold. If this is an investor who is selling on many of their flip properties, they're not going to care who you are. They're just not. They're looking at the numbers. And don't waste your time making a letter in this situation. Maybe if it's an investor that's has personally involved or whatever, but most of the times they don't care. Now, if you run into a situation where you're walking around and you can see it's owned by a family that's lived in it, loved it, taking care of it really well, then this is the perfect opportunity to make that letter. All right, so now we're gonna go through each scenario and we're gonna see what potential things you can do to specifically win for that scenario. But on top of that, things and stories I have personally seen with my clients that we have willed our way into that offer acceptance thing. So starting specifically with the folks who need their closing costs paid, we've already discussed how winning for them is getting an offer accepted, the house you like, with them paying your closing costs. First and foremost, I want you guys to know this, and this is where I usually have a very serious conversation with my clients where I kind of just, humble them a bit. We are coming at this with a disadvantage. If you're coming into this scenario where it's a beautiful house with multiple offers and you go and lowball them and you try to go do all this like you're a baller, it won't work. You're coming at this with this disadvantage because you're specifically asking the seller, whatever offer you're making, you're asking for $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 off their net proceeds to go to you. Please know that you shouldn't feel bad about it. You shouldn't be, or have other people make you feel bad about it. But no, when it comes to negotiation, you kind of lost some leverage there. If you're in a multiple offer situation, which a lot of times happens, then you have to make it worth the seller's while to accept your offer. Now, it doesn't mean always offer 20, 30, 50K, go crazy above value. A smart seller knows that if they take an offer too high, it might have some appraisal issues. So, if you ask for whatever you're asking for closing costs on top of the price, then the seller makes what basically breaks even at the list price. What I mean by this is if you're looking at a $250,000 house and there's $6,000 of closing costs, well then if you ask for $256,000, then the seller is really only making $250,000. Now, if you're in a situation where it's multiple offers, and they're all really good offers, and it's just like one of those, holy moly, this house is gonna sell quick and it's gonna sell a lot expensive, then you have to make it worth the seller's while even more. You're gonna be competing against other people who are asking for closing costs, and everybody's gonna be doing the previous scenario I just discussed about right now. What you want to do is you make it worth their while to go with you. That way, if they go with you, they're going to make a little more money. Now, if they do have an offer that's no closing costs or cash, odds are they might go with them. But let's hope that they're being a little more greedy and they're offering a below list. Now, you could come in and say, we'll do 260 or even 265, 10 or 15 grand above, but you want $6 or $7 grand back. I've even seen people go hey, we'll do 258, but we want $6 grand of closing costs. However much more thousand on top of the price that A, you're comfortable with, and B, you feel is a pretty good value based on the comparables of the area of houses that have sold. Now you might be thinking, Javier, you're crazy. Why would I be making such a higher offer when I'm trying to get a good deal, well, here's a scenario. If there's multiple great offers on this property, then it was already undervalued to begin with. A house that hits the market and there's way more demand than there is supply automatically just gets gobbled up and it just goes way above price. It probably could have gone away with maybe listing it a little higher, right? Keep in mind, very few people actually get to that point where they're making such a higher offer. So only do it if you've seen houses in that area sell for a lot higher than what the house is sold, and it's a house that you really, really love and you really want to secure the deal. Most of the time, if your agent is confident in negotiating low appraisals like me, then even if it's a higher priced house, just make the offer, get it accepted, and if it appraises lower down the road, then figure it out later. Here's another huge tip for this scenario. Now, you might need, let's say, $6,500 or $7,000 according to your lender for closing costs. Well, first and foremost, find out exactly how much closing costs you need for that specific house. You might be surprised with the HOA and the taxes being lower, that now instead of $7,000, you might only need $6,000. Well, then on top of that, what I have done with my clients that usually helps is we don't ask for the whole amount of closing costs. If the house needs about $6,000 of closing costs, we might only ask for $5,000 or even $5,200 or $5,300. Why would I do that? Well, when a seller sees that offer and they're comparing it with other people that are asking for closing costs, other people are lazy and they just put the whole amount, or they put 3% of the closing costs or whatever. Now, if they get you and they see that you're only asking for $5,000, then they're gonna think, you know what? They're asking for help, but they're not asking for the whole pie. A lot of times the lender overestimates, and it turns out when they said you needed $6,000, you might only need $5,000 or even $4,500. So most of the time it works. And if I'm wrong and it does end up being about higher, well, they still overestimated it. And now if you ask for $5,000 and it ends up being like 53 or 54, then you have to come up with an extra few $100. It's not really that big of a deal. I can recall two stories here. One is with one of my clients who this year, I'm not gonna say any names to protect their privacy, but there was their first time them looking, and this house came up in this certain area that they knew they liked. And this house, it clearly was really well taken care of. They loved it. We went to go look at it, and they're like, yep, this is the one. We already know. So I looked at some comps in that area, and I think it was listed at like 230, 240, and I've seen houses sell though for like 250, 260. So I did my regular talk where I just tell them, it's up to you guys, whatever you want to do here. We need this much of closing costs. If you want to, I feel confident we can ask higher. They went like 10 or even 15 grand above price for the offer, and they asked for closing costs. And we went back and forth, and like, guys, we're confident. And they said, yes, we really want this house. We want to do it. So we ended up doing that. I think it was like 255, 250 that we offered, and we asked for it because we asked for so much above the price. We asked for like 6 grand back in closing costs, and it was a long shot because there was like over 10 offers on the property. But I had my clients write a really nice letter. They had their photos attached to it. Well, we got a call about, I think this is the only time it's ever happened in my career. We were out looking at houses, and during the showings, they called me and told me they got the offer accepted. The reason why is because we made a great offer, and secondly, that actual owner of the house was already passed away, and it was their son that took over it. And that specific house had been the original owner, owned it for 40, 50 years, and loved to took care of that house. The son felt it went better to a young family rather than it just going to just whoever else. Now, keep in mind, other offers probably were young families, but they just didn't know because it was just their name. And on top of that, because they made such a great offer with the numbers, it just made sense to go with us. On top of that, even if we asked for 10 or 15 grand above value, the appraisal still came in like at 265, 270, or I don't remember. It came in higher than the actual offer we made. So even though they offered more on the price, it still was worth more than that. So it worked out. Now, if you're paying your own closing costs, or as we're calling it, the B scenario for clients, like I said, our goal here is to make sure that the value you are bringing on the table as a closing cost gets reciprocated in some way. This usually means getting it cheaper, right? So in this situation, if a house is for $250 and it's a multiple offer scenario, well, if you're paying your own closing costs, you might be getting away with $245 or $240. The reason why is because most sellers actually plan to pay closing costs already. So they already kind of mark up their houses just a little bit to anticipate that. But once again, you be the ditto of the situation. If there is a scenario where there's multiple offers and it's going above list price, you can try to offer 10 or 15K below. It's not going to go anywhere. It doesn't matter how valuable you you are, because they would rather take the gamble of the higher price with closing costs to make 10 or 15K. I have a situation that I can think of mine right now where a client about almost a year ago actually found me on YouTube. We met up, saved up incredible down payment, had enough for closing costs, and just really was a very solid buyer. We were out looking. It took about one or few showings to kind of him figure it out, but on our second showing we found a house that was really great. It had been listed originally too high, so it didn't sell right away, but the sellers were now kind of antsy to get going, so they reduced it to like 285. Brand new tile, countertop, it was just beautiful. So initially we walked in and we were kind of surprised because everything on paper seemed like it wasn't a good house, but walking in, it was just like, wow, if they had listed a little better up front, they probably would have had it sold already. The client could afford his own closing costs. His priority was to get more of a deal than have the seller pay the closing costs. So we talked back and forth, and we ended up making an offer at 270, 15 grand below value. Now I told them anticipate a counter offer. I would certainly counter offer if I was the seller. I don't think there was a letter presented, but I made sure to include in my email a little bit about the buyer so they knew who it was going to. And overall, we ended up countering back and forth, and I think it sold like the high 270, so it was right in the middle. It wasn't 285, it wasn't 270, it was like 270 range. And the great news is that actually ended up appraising at, I think, the value that was originally valued at 285, but we got it cheaper. So it all ended up working out in a favor. We used the leverage for him to get the house cheaper, and he literally walked in with equity because the house ended up appraising higher. Which leads me to my final point. Whatever situation you're in, guys, you can't get too emotionally tied to houses. You're gonna lose, you're gonna win some, you have to grow thick skin. If you're out there and you're struggling, just don't give up. And finally, if you guys have any questions or anything, please leave a comment below. I am here to help. For everyone who stuck around, thank you so much. There's 2 more videos coming up in this series. I'm excited to share them with you in the next few weeks. This is end of November. I know I'm not supposed to be date specific, but if you are watching this around the end of the year, I hope you have a great New Year's, Christmas, Thanksgiving, Hanukkah, whatever you celebrate. I hope you have a great time with your friends and family. If you want to contact me, you're in the Phoenix real estate area and you have some home goals in the Phoenix, Arizona area in 2020, my contact information can be found below or to the side. Feel free to call me, make an appointment with me, text me, do what you got to do. 2020 is going to be great for everybody, guys. I hope you guys have a great one. Thank you, guys. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.